started a series a few weeks ago in the book of Mark, taking a look at Jesus and the uprising that he came to create. That uprising was not just cultural, it was also spiritual. And the spiritual uprising that began back then is continuing in our hearts and our lives today, if we allow it to. So what we've been doing is we've been taking a look at different encounters throughout the Gospel of Mark, who was written very specifically to kind of show Jesus as this man of action, to give us these ideas about these things that he came to create and all of that. And so today we're going out of order because it's Mother's Day. Last week we were in chapter 4, next week we'll be in chapter 5, but today we're going to be in chapter 14. Why? Because Mother's Day is important, yes, and no matter where you are in that spectrum, and I know that Mother's Day can bring a lot of pain for people that had either difficult mothers or have lost their mothers or want to be moms and can't be. That's huge, and it's understandable, and our prayer for you is that Jesus walks right through that with you. But it's also the day when we take a look at what mothers do and why we celebrate them, because we're not just celebrating you because you're pretty. I mean, yeah, we're celebrating you because mothers do what? Man, they sacrifice in a big way, right? And they serve other people, and sometimes it seems like a pretty unnoticed job until you stop doing whatever it is that you do, right? And then all of a sudden, the people that are involved in your life are like, don't ever stop doing that again. Like when the mom goes out of town for a little bit, or she's sick, oh, I hated those times. And most of the time when our kids had really bad, like hairdos or whatever, when we would go to church and Trish wouldn't be around if she was at a conference or whatever, it was a mess, wasn't it? Yeah. So moms are important, and part of that is because they serve and they sacrifice like no other. I'm not saying that dads don't either, but I'm telling you, there's nothing like a mom who's just burning the midnight oil, who's getting up early to make sack lunches, who may be working a couple of jobs to help provide for the family, who's there to pick kids up from school or to hear about their day when they get home from work, to tuck them into bed, to wipe their noses when they're snotty, and to change their diapers when they're dirty, because guys certainly don't like to do that, right? And we'll try to avoid that as often as possible. The service and the sacrifice that women make is always amazing. And so today I thought that we'd go out of order to take another look at a woman who is celebrated throughout the Bible. Not just throughout the Bible, but Jesus says of her, no matter where the gospel is preached, from this point forward, your story would be told because of her act of service and her willingness to sacrifice for Jesus. And so that's why we're taking a look here. That's why we're going out of order. And this account is particularly cool because of some of the stuff that we get to learn. So if you have your Bibles, open them up to Mark chapter 14. Next week we'll be back in Mark chapter 5, I think, if I remember my notes correctly. But this week, chapter 14, we're kind of skipping ahead. Let me set the scene. This is the last week of Jesus' life. He's about to go into Jerusalem, triumphal entry, Palm Sunday stuff, and then the crucifixion that happens later. But he's kind of pausing right now at his friend's house. And the reason is because of what we're going to get into here in verse 1. Ready? Chapter 14, verse 1. I was laughing first hour because only women, and especially mothers, can actually flip open their Bibles while eating their cinnamon roll at the same time and listen to what I'm saying. Guys can't do that many things at one time. So here we go. Mark chapter 14, verse 1. It says, now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. Okay, so again, let's remind ourselves what's happening. During this time of the Jewish calendar, Jerusalem would swell to 3 times its normal numbers. So imagine if, like Colorado Springs went from, I should have looked this number up, I have no idea how big it is, but from whatever it is now, to 3 times more. Like you think about 5 o'clock traffic on Academy Boulevard or Powers Boulevard is bad now, imagine 3 times that amount. It's huge, right? Sorry, I just got a notification. I hate that when that happens when I'm up here because I get easily distracted. It's huge. It's a lot more. So why are they all coming? Because we learned that it's the Passover celebration and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Well, why do they celebrate those 2 things? Do y'all remember why? Okay, it's okay if you don't. But Passover was the last plague. that God inflicted upon Egypt to allow Pharaoh, or kind of force his hand, to let the Israelites flee and get out of Dodge, Egypt. So, the Passover celebration was done because God said, okay, folks, this last plague is coming, and it's bad, and I want to spare my people. So here's what you do. You take the blood of a lamb and you swipe it around your doorway. And any house that is marked by that blood of the lamb is passed over by the spirit that's coming to inflict this plague. Anybody that's not marked by the blood of the lamb, they lose their firstborn. And it was a horrible plague. It says that many Egyptians woke up in the morning and you could just hear the wailing throughout the city. And Pharaoh himself, and he's finally like, okay, get out. I don't want to see you for another day. And so they celebrated Passover because of God's incredible protection of them. And they celebrate unleavened bread because of his incredible provision for them. He says to them, when it's time to go, it's time to go. Don't wait around to allow the dough to rise. Imagine, ladies, if we had not let this dough in these cinnamon rolls rise before we just threw it in the oven and baked it. It would be like, right? A rock. It'd be gross, wouldn't it? It would not be nearly the special treat that we prepared for you today. So the unleavened bread, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, was this reminder of God is providing and protecting and allowing them to leave, but they have to leave in such a hurry. They don't have time to wait for their bread to rise. Just bake it and let's go. So these festivals, these celebrations, God kind of ordained for them to gather together and to celebrate God's goodness and memorialize all of that. So Jerusalem would swell, it says 3 times what was normal. And what's happening here is, remember, his popularity had been on the increase. I told you that a couple of weeks ago, even last week. But his opposition was also what? Increasing. So at this time, there's all kinds of opposition. The religious leaders have had their fill with Jesus, and they want to get rid of him as quickly as possible. But they know because of the uprising in the population and Jesus' popularity, they cannot do it during the Passover. And they say, but verse 2, not during the festival. Why? Because they'd have a riot on their hands. And then everything that they knew and believed in and enjoyed would fall apart. Rome would not stand for that kind of thing happening in that city. And the Jews probably would have been dispersed. So verse 3. So while all of this is happening in the city, Jesus is actually in Bethany. Verse 3 says, while he was in Bethany, so all that's happening in the city, and this is kind of behind the scenes in Bethany. Bethany was a pretty quick shot to get into the city from, and we know that Bethany was one of Jesus' favorite places to go, kind of to relax and rest and pull back and find some margin in his life and enjoy, because who lived there? Y'all remember? Yep, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. They were headquartered in Bethany, and so Jesus would often come through there and stay at their house. And so we imagine that's what's happening here, but we're not for sure. Here's why. It says, while he's in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper. Do y'all know who Simon the leper is? I mean, by this, we know Simon the leper is a leper. I mean, would you want to stay at a leper's home? No, especially not back then. They didn't have great hygiene stuff going on. They didn't know about antibacterial hand soap and all of that. So lepers were kind of forced to be outcasts and live outside the city. But apparently Simon's house is in the city because that's where Jesus is. So we imagine that Jesus healed Simon. And we don't know a lot more about Simon other than this passage, Simon the leper. We don't know. There's not a lot of information about it. But the disciples knew who Simon the leper was because they talked about him a couple of times throughout scriptures that we can find. But we don't know who he was. So there's speculation that Simon the leper is actually Mary and Martha and Lazarus' dad. Okay? And again, we don't know that from reading Mark. We know that because smarter people than me have done a lot of research to figure this out. What we know about in Mark is Simon the leper has this house in Bethany, and the disciples are pretty familiar with him, and Jesus is reclining at the tables at his home eating dinner. And a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume. Now, this story is very similar to other accounts in the Bible of another woman showing up at Simon the Pharisee's house and pouring perfume on Jesus' feet. But these are two separate experiences, two separate encounters, two separate people. It's not the same woman, and it's not the same Simon. One was Simon the Pharisee, one is Simon the leper. Okay? And Mark doesn't tell us who the woman is. Did you catch her name in that passage? A woman came with an alabaster jar, a very expensive perfume. Okay, so why didn't Mark name her? I'm glad you asked. Remember, Mark wrote his gospel very, very early in terms of the history of biblical accounts, okay? Mark wrote way before the Apostle John wrote. John was an old man when he wrote the book of John. And John names this woman. And you know what this woman's name is? Mary of Bethany. Mary, the sister of Martha, sister of Lazarus, possibly the daughter of Simon the leper. We don't know. Mark doesn't name her because there was prosecution and persecution happening in the Christian church. And sometimes we read these Gospels and we're like, oh yeah. But Mark knows that if he calls Mary of Bethany, then everybody knows what Mary of Bethany. Oh, that must be Simon the leper's daughter, and we're going to go persecute her because now she's been affiliated with this movement, this uprising that we don't like. John names her years and years later because she might not even be alive by that point. We have no idea. We find out who this woman is through the book of John. And what else do we know about Mary of Bethany? How many times has Mary been found at the feet of Jesus? 3 times. Okay, 3 times. John tells us that she's at the feet of Jesus in this encounter. But when else did we find Mary at the feet of Jesus?
The tomb.
The tomb? And what else?
Well, when her sister was cooking
Yes.
in the kitchen.
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes! Martha's like, Jesus, will you tell her to come in and help me? And Mary's like reclined at Jesus' feet going, feed me, Jesus, tell me more. I'm dying to learn as much as I possibly can about you. And Jesus tells Martha, girl, I'm sure that's the tone he used to. Mary's chosen what's better here. Go. Don't worry about dishes. That'll happen in due time. But be with me while I'm here. See, Mary gets it, and she loves Jesus, and she can't help but be around him and be found, like, absorbing everything that she possibly can from the guy. John tells us that. Mark doesn't give us a whole lot of details, but again, if there's somebody like Mary in your life, you certainly don't want to put her in jeopardy. So Mark doesn't name her, but John does. But this woman comes in, Bethany, Mary from Bethany, we know that, comes in with this alabaster jar, very expensive perfume, made of pure nard. Anybody get pure nard perfume for Mother's Day today? Some of you smell really good, so it wouldn't surprise me. You'd run right up to the nard store and be like, I need a good gift for my mom. Here's some pure nard. No? Okay, that's all right. We're going to find out more about that here in a second. But she takes this perfume and she breaks the bottle because it's the only way to open it. And she pours the perfume on his head. And John says, on his feet too, I think. That's the when we find her at his feet. But Mary, sitting with Jesus at this table. Remember, Jesus is about to enter into Jerusalem. He knows what's before him. My bet is that Jesus' countenance changed like yours does when you're about to go into a really big test or a really difficult conversation or something that's really going to be stressful on you. Like, you're not just happy to go like Graham all the time. All of a sudden, you're like, no, focus. I bet Jesus' focus changed, and I bet you Mary could sense it, and everybody else is just eating their lunch. And here she is going, I gotta do something. I can tell something's not right. I gotta do something. She goes to her room and she brings back this perfume. She breaks the bottle, it says, and she pours the perfume over his head. She does everything that she possibly can with everything that she has to show Jesus that she loves him and that he's worthwhile. Watch what happens. Everybody is surprised and complained. Some of those present we're saying indignantly to one another. It's always been a hard word for me to say indignant. I am indignant with you. That's why I just say, I'm pretty mad. Why? Because you say, why are they wasting this? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the pure. She does this beautiful act. She thinks nothing about doing it. And all of a sudden, these people in the room are like, you're wasting money. Why would you do that? Imagine the whole house is filled with the aroma of her perfume. I got up this morning and came into this room and it smelled like somebody had been grilling. Whoa. Right? Yeah. And I was like, what happened? Well, sure enough, last night I grilled. And it was outside, you know, in this backyard, and somehow the smell got in this room, and it stayed in this room, and when I got up this morning, I smelled it, and it was an okay smell. I mean, because old grilling smell isn't great. Like, when it's grilling, it's good, but old grilling smell is not great, and so it was a little bit. But imagine, the room is filled with this smell of perfume, and it's just thick. Why do we know this? Well, a couple of things about this perfume. It was very, very expensive perfume. We find out a few verses later, maybe I read it or maybe I didn't, I don't remember, but it could have been sold for a year's wages. Well, what they would have done back then is they would have collected this perfume, either through a purchase or it would have been handed down from generation to generation because it was an investment. They knew for sure that what they paid for the perfume, it would at least stay at that level over years, but it probably would get more and more expensive. Why? Because this kind of perfume isn't like the stuff that's sitting on your shelf probably in your bedroom when you get ready to come to church and you want to smell good. This stuff is pure spikenard, which is imported from one place in the world, Nepal, India, at the time. And it says that it was in what kind of container? Alabaster. Alabaster was created in one part of the world, alabaster on Egypt. So it had to go from Nepal, India, to Alabastron, Egypt, to be bottled. And as it's bottled, the bottle is completely sealed up because it's made out of alabaster. So the only way to open it is to break it. And if you break it, you can't ever reseal it. So you use this stuff very, very sparingly and only for very, very special occasions. And it's pure. It's not watered down like the stuff that you buy today at Kohl's. John says that it was over a pound of perfume. Now, the other thing that we know is that this kind of perfume may have been used as a woman's dowry. It certainly was a family's inheritance, but it could have possibly also been used as a woman's dowry. So when you married your daughters off, they came with a gift. Aren't you glad we don't do that today? Although weddings are pretty expensive nowadays anyway, so maybe that's kind of similar. The woman would have come with this gift, and the husband could have either sold it or they could have kept it or whatever. So her future is this perfume. Did Martha have one too? I don't know, maybe. Maybe she did. But regardless, Mary is bursting with love for Jesus. She says, what can I do? What do I have? How can I show him this love? And she goes and she grabs this inheritance. She grabs this bottle of her dowry. What if she can't get married now? Because the guy won't accept her. She doesn't come with enough money. I don't know. She's bursting with love for her Savior. And she walks in, she breaks it, she pours it, and the next thing you know, everybody's like, you could have, you could have. You could have. You ever been up late at night watching TV? And you're flipping through channels and you come across one of those feed the orphans advertisements on television and you're like, oh. Or maybe it's you're flipping through channels and you hear that one song that reminds you of exactly what it's representing. And the arms of the puppy will follow from help. So send your money quickly now. You know, Dominicans, that's the words, right? Something like that. But doesn't that how it feels? Like, you feel so guilted into doing something, and so often in our lives, we walk around feeling like being generous, being extravagant, doing these kinds of things for people is a waste of money, because that's how the Pharisees thought. That's how some of the disciples even thought. And in this room of disciples, hear them saying, "What are you doing, woman?" We could have, and meanwhile, all she's trying to do is just like show Jesus how much she loves him, like in the best way she knows how, to give him everything that she can. And verse 5 says it could have been sold for more than a year's wages on the money given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. Who did? The disciples did. The guys that were following Jesus. Now we know, again, because of these other accounts of this event that John tells us, that the harshest critic against her was, guess who? Judas. Why? A couple of reasons. Judas was the treasurer. Judas was skimming money off the top. Judas is looking at this going, man, that's a lot of money. I could buy a new Lexus for that. Right? He's like, don't do that. But Judas also doesn't understand what's happening here. And Jesus gets it. Like, look, because Mary loved Jesus with all her heart and soul and strength and mind, she is giving him everything she has to offer. Does that sound familiar? Who else loves us so much to give us everything he has to offer? Jesus, right? And so if Judas can't understand Mary's act of extravagant grace, how in the world can Judas understand Jesus' immensely greater act of extravagant grace? He can't. And so he's railing against it. The rest of the disciples are too. They're all incredibly insensitive to what's happening. The only sensitive one in the bunch is who? Mary. And she does this. And I don't think she was like looking to cause I think she was just like, I'm just going to, and she rushes in and does this service to Jesus, and everybody else is like, oh. She's like, what? What happened? What did I do? She's probably not even thinking about it. Jesus says in verse 6, guys, leave her alone. Leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She's done a beautiful thing to me. She says, I am worth this. I mean, wow. Jesus knows what this is worth. He probably knows better than anybody. So I'm worth it, guys. Worth it. I'm going to be here for a little while and you're not going to see me anymore. What she's doing for me in this moment is a beautiful thing. He sees it as an expression of love. The poor, he says, you will always have with you. Turn off the TV commercials. Don't listen to that stuff. You'll always be able to help the poor. You drive past them every day. You'll always be able to help them. But you will not always have me. He says in verse 8, she did what she could. She did what she could. Now, what she did was extremely extravagant. But she could do that. Any act of love shown to Jesus, no matter how extravagant, or no matter whether it's just maybe what you can't do, he views as something beautiful. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare me for my burial. See, Jesus hasn't been anointed king yet, has he? You haven't seen that? We know, based on our time through Palm Sunday and Easter, that Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea were the ones that kind of wrapped Jesus' body up and put him in the tomb because it was close, because Passover is coming, or Sabbath is coming. I forget which day it was, sorry. And they're trying to get him in the grave before sundown, before they start to break all of the rules and customs that they had to live by, right? But they didn't do everything because the women showed up as soon as they could to finish the job. But yet Jesus is saying, listen, guys, Mary of Bethany is anointing me king. Mary of Bethany is anointing me for burial. Mary of Bethany, none of you are doing that. This woman is. This woman, who you're making fun of because she showed an extravagant act of grace and love to me. Knock it off. I wish I could have been there. I love it when Jesus gets a little feisty with me, you know? He was anointed king, but not by a prophet, and anointed for burial, but not by his disciples. She loved him with everything that she could, and she did what she could. In verse 8, he says that. And he says in verse 9, truly I tell you, because of this woman's extravagant act of love and service to me, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. And we're doing that today. The things that I love is when we can look and see Jesus say something, and then we're doing something, and there's a direct connection between the two. The reason that we're here today is because Jesus said, this story will always be told. And Mark's like, you better get that in your book. And so he writes it down, and we get to see it. And here it is today. We're still talking about this woman. Why? Why? Well, for a couple of really easy reasons. I mean, she's incredibly sensitive to Jesus and to Jesus' need. She loved him with everything that she had to love him with. And she did all of she could. And this love is beginning in her heart, and it's kind of rising up through her, and it's bursting out into expression. And if we're going to be like Mary, man, we gotta come right back to where Mary was. Well, where was she? She recognized that Jesus offered a fully new life for her. She might not have had all the details. I mean, I really wonder, what did she know? Some people that I read said, she knew that he was going to die and be resurrected. She got the gospel. Wouldn't surprise me, because usually in my experience, women are always 2 or 3 steps ahead of guys. Right? Like, I didn't think of that. She was like, welcome to the party, Nod your head like, yes, I've been there, 3 steps ahead. Maybe she did know. Maybe she didn't. Maybe it was just a sincere act of, this guy's just great. And here, and I can't even imagine, like, having a pound of oil poured over your head. She recognized that he offered her a new life. She recognized that what he was speaking about religion was not the old way of following rules, but the new way of following a person. She recognized that this man was her Messiah. She might have had it figured out. She might not have had it figured out. I have no idea. But she recognized that salvation is now found in a person, not in a moral code of conduct. Salvation's found in a person, and this person loved her very much, and she was going to give him everything that she possibly could. And so, being sensitive to him and what's going on, this expression of love bursts forth onto the scene, and she does this service. And she was the only one in the room that got it. 12 of those guys had followed Jesus for the past 3 years, closely. They camped out with him. They ate with him. They watched him do miracles and heal people. Some of them got to go up on the Mount of Transfiguration and watch God speak to him. And they're like, oh, maybe we should build some tents so we can stay here, right? Like, these guys knew what was going on. They followed, and he even told them several times, I'm going to my crucifixion. And Peter said, no, that can't happen. He's like, yes, it must. And they're in the room, and the only one that is sensitive to where Jesus is the woman Mary. The only one. The rest of them were insensitive. They didn't have any idea what's going on. Some of them were downright mean to Mary for what she'd done. One of them in particular we know was evil. And soon after this, he betrays Jesus. He makes arrangements to betray Jesus right after this. He's so upset that Mary would waste that kind of money on Jesus that he meets with the chief priests and elders right after this event. Only one was sensitive. Only one. And she saw Jesus. She had to do something, and they were just detached from it. So what do we need to know to be like Mary in this situation? Well, a couple of things. I think as we are kind of celebrating Mother's Day today, as we're talking about this uprising, as we're talking about this love that's bursting out into expression in our hearts that hopefully we have, there's a couple of things that I want us all to focus in on first, and then we'll look at one more thing before we go. Gestures matter. Large and extravagant gestures are completely appropriate for Jesus. If you have the opportunity, if you have the means, if you feel like there's no other way to show your love but then to do something large and incredible for Jesus, man, I'm telling you, do it. And I've seen some of you do that. And it always is humbling and amazing when you have the opportunity to do these large and extravagant gestures. He is worth it, and it will always be good for you. But regardless, if you're not capable of doing this is not an excuse. This is just a real life thing. Many of us don't feel like what we do during the day, the week, the month, the year is large or extravagant. Many of us find ourselves living in this mundane life, going to work every day, or taking care of kids every day, or going through the motions every day, and these little things that we do, like buying the person behind us in line a coffee at Starbucks or Kava, which is better, feels mundane, monotonous, insignificant. And I'm here to tell you, to release us all from all of these stigmas and these stipulations. If you have the opportunity to show extravagance to somebody in the love of Jesus, do it. If you have the opportunity to do the mundane for somebody in the love of Jesus, do it. Because both are remembered by Jesus, elevated by Jesus, and He's very, very pleased by it. Because anything done motivated from love, He says, is beautiful. My hope is that, man, you hear that and you go, I don't have to take a year's worth of salary, which I'm guessing, the average U.S. income salary for one person is what, $55,000 a year? It's higher or lower than that? Roughly. Luke was going to fact check it. Yeah. That's okay. We'll just pretend. We'll just pretend that someplace between 50 and 55,000 is the average U.S. income average. Some people are going to make more, some people less, but let's say average. And imagine taking that kind of money and purchasing something that you're going to pour out on someone. And Jesus says, for me, that's completely appropriate. Completely appropriate. He also says, look, there's a woman who has 2 cents to her name, and she gives it to me. It seems small and meaningless and insignificant, but it's what she can do. And she does it. He says, that is huge. Anything that comes from the motive of love, he says, is beautiful. So do something and let it be beautiful for God. When we follow it, and we do it motivated in love, he says, no matter what it is, changing dirty diapers, giving somebody a glass of water, spending a lot of money, it's all beautiful. So how do we develop that kind of sensitivity to Jesus so that we know what's going on, like Mary did? What do we talk about? How many times did Mary find herself at Jesus' feet? 3 that are written down, which means probably happened a lot more than that. See, Mary knew that everything that this man said was important. Mary knew that being around him changed her life. Mary knew that he deserved her following and her attention and her right there. Whatever you need, Jesus, I'm here. Like, she knew that. And whether even you need it or not, I'm going to break this bottle of alabaster oil and pour it over your head. She was that sensitive and that aware. Why? Because she was constantly found at the feet of Jesus. He's the vine, we are the branches. If we abide in him, he says, right? Over and over and over, we see this concept, and we see it playing out right here in front of us. The way that we become sensitive and keep our faith fresh with Jesus is what? spending time with them. Spending time with them. Spending time with them. You guys have heard about the 5 love languages, right? There's like gifts, quality time, touch, acts of service, and shopping. Words of affirmation, yeah. Quality time, right? Shopping. Amazon shopping. Oh wait, that's my love language. Trish's is quality time, which is beautiful, but it's also really, really difficult because it's just, I know that if she has access to me, if we're together, then she's happy. And when we're not together, then she's probably not in such a good space. Well, and it depends on how my attitude is when we are in the same space together. If my attitude's bad, then it really doesn't matter because quality of time's like, get out. And so anyway, in that, like, it's great. And we have the option and opportunity now that our kids kind of doing their own things, spend a lot of time together. And it's awesome when we get to spend time together. It's really cool because I can like hit that target for her pretty easy. Like spending time with her, she doesn't care what we're doing, and she's happy. But there's a downside to it too, right? Like no matter how much time I spend with her, guess what she wants more of? More time, right? No matter how much time I spend on Amazon, guess what I want more of? More Amazon. Yeah. So that's part of these love languages, and that's the positives and negatives to all of it. Okay. But the point is here, I truly believe that God's love language is quality time with His kids. He loves it, guys. He wants time with you. He's jealous for time with you. There is nothing else in your life more important than your time with your Heavenly Father. There's nothing else that will shape you and mold you and create in you the kind of heart that He's longing to create in you than time with your Father. There's so many things that can obstruct it and distract it, and so many things last week we talked about this. The thorns that grow with the good seed of God's presence are good things. They're normal things. They're things like your finances, and there are things like your career, and there are things like your kids, and all of those things are part of your normal life. And God says that those things, if they're left unchecked, will grow so strong they will choke out the good thing, which is Him. And many of us in our lives will turn to anything but the good thing that's Him and call it good. Because that's going to choke you out. Mary was sensitive to Jesus in the midst of a room full of His followers because she spent time at His feet. Are you spending time at His feet? There's nothing more important than that. Nothing more important than that. And my challenge to all of us is, man, if you want to see an uprising happen in your life, if you want to be in a position where love for Him will burst out into expression, whether it's through mundane things or through incredibly extravagant things that He calls beautiful, you have to be spending time at His feet. Otherwise, the motive is off. It's selfish. It's not Christ-like, because that's our natural default. And we gotta spend time at His feet. So go home. Well, let's sing a song first. And then go home and call your mom. And then today, I want you to spend some time with Him at His feet. I don't care how you do it, but do it, because everything else is trying to choke you out. And we don't want that. My desire for each and every one of us, including myself, is to see this uprising in our lives, in our hearts, that we can't help but from burst forth in some kind of expression that people are going to look like, what the heck are you doing? Jesus is worth it. Jesus is worth it. Let's pray.